Hello, Chicago. Hello, world. Hello, America. Good to see you guys. Welcome to Hawkwind's Radio Picture Show. As always, my name is Jack Dwyer.
And I'm Jay Smooth.
We got a great show for you guys tonight. Tonight in the house, we have Mark Thomas, the owner of the Alley, the infamous Alley here in Chicago. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure, anything to help you guys get going here.
We greatly appreciate it. Well, let's just get right into it, baby. Let's do it.
Yeah, man, let's do it, bro.
Mark, we just want to thank you first and foremost for joining us. Honestly, me and Jay have been looking forward to having you on the show for quite some time. We've shopped at your shop for many years, as well as many other Chicagoans. I was watching an interview with you recently, and you mentioned that there are 3 generations that have come through your doors.
Well, 4 actually.
Now 4, going on
right.
4.
We end up with 4 generations.
That's incredible.
I'm gonna be 70 in 2 weeks, and imagine me with a 50-year-old child with their 25-year-old child with the
Jesus.
we've had 4 generations in this store, not all the time, but pretty often.
That's
A lot of 3s, a lot of 2s.
That reminds me a lot of, like, for example, when the bands like Metallica say something like where they have like 4 generations of like fans come into that kind of. Does that make you feel the same way, dude?
Yeah, it's just,
man.
oh my God, it's wonderful.
That's awesome.
Do you get that a lot? What are some of the kind words that people share with you of the legacy that you've made?
You know what? I guess what says it all is when I, walk through the store, I say, hey, thanks for being here. And they go, no, thank you for being here. And so the real truth is we just outlasted everybody. And we're the only store like this in 5 states. And, there used to be 900 stores like the Alley in America. They got wiped out by the bullshit from Hot Topic. Yeah, and then, of course, now Hot Topic's like, Disneyland crapola. And people are grateful. And I mean, I think more than anything else, the front door says it all, a safe place for weirdos, freaks, and misfits. And so, we accept everybody as long as they come in and they kindly treat each other. And that's a big deal. We had an incident in the store the other day with a guy who might have been more socially unacceptable in our space, and I took care of him the whole time he was there and got him out the door. And then I kind of explained to my staff, I said, this guy, had a swastika tattoo on her wrist and, a couple other things, and that just isn't who the Alley is. And they go, well, why didn't you ask him to leave? I said, because he was acting like a gentleman. And I said, and when we look at somebody like that, and who knows if that's even who he is today, because there's a lot of people with old tattoos they regret. But when we look at somebody like that and we judge them, are we any better than they are? So as long as they come into our space and they treat themselves and us with respect, everybody's welcome.
And if you're ready to drop some money too, right?
Well, you know what? Dropping money's, a big piece of the action, but a bigger piece is just the people. I'm going to be 70 years old. I mean, I never thought I'd live to see 18 and 21 and 25, and I went to the hospital with drug overdoses. I'm lucky to be alive and be here. So, I married Adrian 38 years ago, and suddenly I'm 70 years old, and I go, what the hell happened to the last 38 years? It's gone really quickly, and we've had a ball, and I've gone broke once. I've lost a lot of money another time. I mean, it's not like, we're super wealthy, people who've got everything in the world. We've done well, and we worked hard. I mean, Adrian always laughs when I tell people I'm semi-retired. She goes, yeah, he's semi-retired. He used to work 70 hours a week, and now he works 55 hours a week.
Well, speaking of being 18 and 25, would you mind taking us back a little bit? We like to get to know our guest here a little bit. I was reading somewhere that before you started the Alley, or before you took over the Alley, you took out money from your college and you bought a jewelry store?
Well, no, I bought a jewelry factory. So I was at Latin School of Chicago, which is a hoity-toity, cost you $1 million for an education there, and I'd already visited Harvard. My dad was a doc, And, kind of like the die was cast. The question was whether I was going to be a Harvard lawyer or a Harvard doc. And I was sent away to boarding school to get my grades up a little, get my scores up a little. Came back, got into Latin school. That's the fast track into Harvard, Yale, Princeton.
Wow.
And one day it was right before spring break started. Suddenly the headmaster of the school's waiting for me as I walk out of my last class, and everybody was addressed as Mr. Thomas, you're not in any trouble, but I need to speak with you. And we went to his office, and he said, I've never had to tell a student this before, but nobody's paid your tuition. Your parents aren't returning my phone call. If you don't come back with a check in your hand, you can't come back to school.
Whoa.
So there I was, stuck in the middle of all the bullshit with my parents and their divorce. And, I've gotten over it all. They're gone. They did the best they could. Parents aren't, somebody once told me that parents can't always give you what you want, but usually they give you all they got.
It's true. I believe that. Yeah. Oh.
And so I walked out the door. I knew that part of my life was over. I walked over to Holy Name Cathedral. I was the only Jewish kid to ever walk in the front door. I got the principal to take me in, and she said, well, you might as well not start till September. So there I was, spring. I was out of school for 6 months before I came back. And, that summer, I went to work in Old Town, which was like Greenwich Village, and the streets were packed. To walk from Schiller to North Avenue was probably a 40-minute walk. It's only 2 blocks. And so if I was going out for lunch, I'd have to walk in the street to be able to go get a sandwich and get back to work on time. So I only held really 2 jobs in my life that summer. And frankly, I met the guy who owned 7 stores, and he owned this jewelry casting equipment that we still run today. We don't run it much. It's more like Mark's hobby. We make some belt buckles and some necklaces, and we screen print our own T-shirts. And so, I got to know this guy, and one day he said, I talk like this, and he was an old sailor. He says, you want to buy my jewelry factory, kid? And I'd seen his place, and I go, what do you? So anyway, I've got up on my wall, there's a cashier's check for $1,726. There was a $10,000 order on the desk, and the pot was full of metal, and all I had to do was buy some chain and make a lot of peace signs. And over the next month, my buddies and I in school would jump into my 65 Chevy, we'd go to the factory, we'd make peace signs, we'd study together for an hour, I'd drop everybody else off, we'd all go to school the next day, we did it all over. At the end of the month, I had 10 grand in my hand from $1,700 bucks, and I paid them, and everybody got some extra money, and that was the beginning.
That was the beginning of the alley, or was that? So the alley was already a thing before you.
So yeah, the alley existed before I got there, and then the alley, peace signs kind of started to wane, and suddenly, we're watching the whole head shop. We started making roach clips on the jewelry equipment, and we started to sell them to a guy who had kind of control of what was going into the alley. It was kind of like the merchandise guy for the alley in Whitfield. Okay. And so, they became our biggest customer, and they owed us money. And suddenly we weren't getting paid, and I couldn't pay my staff. I couldn't pay rent. I couldn't put gas in the car. And so I, went over to the guy's office who owned it. He had 30, 40 employees there. He owned restaurants all over America. And I walked in, and, I said, where's Don Lynn? He's in a meeting, sir. You'll have to sit down. So I just walked in and, pounded through the door, and I looked at the guys who were sitting on the couch. I said, y'all ought to dial 911 and call for the police and an ambulance and get out of here. And these guys were all in suits, and they all whooshed out of the room.
Whoa.
And he looked at me, and he goes, that was pretty rude. And I go, yeah, it's pretty fucking rude not to pay me, too.
Yeah.
I said, my people are hungry. We need money for food. We need money for metal. Oh, sit down, sit down, sit down. And I took my hand and I whacked about half the stuff off his desk. And I said, I want my money. There was a lot of F words there, too.
Yeah, I bet.
And then, he said, well, sit down, let's talk about it. So I took his desk and I kind of started to pick it up and push it over. Are you guys in a suit and a tie? And he goes, all right, I'll get you a check.
Okay, yeah.
So you know, he kind of asked me. He says, "Wow, you got a set of balls, kid. Why don't you, something's going on in that store, and I'm a restaurateur, and I don't know what's going on. Why don't you go undercover?" So the whole undercover boss thing.
Yeah.
So I went out there and I discovered how the manager was cleaning out the register, but he had his own register, and that's how come my future partner couldn't catch him, because he bought his own merchandise, he used his own register, but he was stealing half the space in Woodfield Mall.
Whoa.
Dang.
So, and then we found out there was him and about 10 other stores in the mall that were all colluding together.
Oh shit.
And, so eventually I went back to my future partner and I said, "Well, here's what's going on. By the way, give me the rest of my money." And he goes, "Well, what are we going to do about this?" And I go, "What do you mean we? You got a problem." I diagnosed it. "You go fix it." And he goes, "Well, and I said, "Wait a minute." So he said to me, "What would you do?" I said, "Well, I'd go out to the Schaumburg Police Department and I'd find somebody who was in charge, and I'd say, 'How'd you like to stop a theft ring at Woodfield Mall?'" By the way, the name of that police officer who was running that department was Captain Alley.
Captain Alley. Oh my God.
So anyway, a few days later, they came in. They busted about 40 people working in 10 stores, and my partner got me a room in what was called the Holodome, which was half a disco and half a Holiday Inn. But
Oh shit, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, that and my fucking ounce of coke. Those were big times, and so
that was back when the cocaine was pure.
It was really pure, and you know what?
70s stakeout. Yeah.
And so in 2 weeks we hired and retrained a whole staff, and doubled the gross sales. And I went back to my partner. I said, "Okay, give me the last payment." And he goes, "I want you to be my partner now."
Nice.
And I said, "Well, I don't have any money. I just got my money out of you." And he goes, "Well, you got to have some skin in the game, kid." So anyway, I just looked at him and I blew him off. I walked out the door, and a couple weeks later, I got a call from his bookkeeper who said, "Mr. Lynn wants to see you. He's opening a new discotheque. And I don't understand what this means, but he said, you'll have a good time. They're going to have a wet T-shirt contest."
Nice.
I didn't even know what a wet T-shirt contest was, but she said, "But you can't wear blue jeans to get in the door. You're going to have to get black slacks and a black shirt."
Shit.
So anyway, we went out there. We talked. I had a little store across from our factory. I ended up putting the inventory from that store in as my investment into that store. And over the next 3 years, as a 21-year-old kid, he and I split $1 million in profit.
Jesus. So you were pretty young when that happened.
I couldn't even sign the contract originally. I had an older guy who had kind of taken me under his wing, so he signed the original contract. Then on my 21st birthday, he signed it over to me.
Jesus. Wow. So what does that feel like, splitting $500,000 at 21 years old, man? Like, I can't even imagine.
Well,
what
it
that
almost
feels
killed me.
like. I've seen a lot of interviews with like rock stars that pretty much say the same thing.
Yeah, it
like, I
almost
just
killed me.
got a bunch of money.
I got to tell you something. Money's an important commodity in life, and I've lived well, and I've fucked up and lost a lot of money. I've made a lot of money, and I'm just kind of I'm a regular, little bit better than a middle class guy, but I'm one of you, and I'm one of my customers. And that's, people come in and they sir me, or they call me Mr. Thomas. I said, "Please, my name's Mark. If you call me sir, I think you're the police or the federal." I said, and I when you see these billionaires, they're all assholes. Money is just destroying their life. They can't go out in public. They think everything they say is, the truth, and it's not. So how did it feel? Man, I was stoned and had fast sports cars and flying all over the place, and we by the way, I mean, by that time we opened up our store in the city at Broadway and Surf, and we had Plant and Page coming in, and then I bought the first building at 1019 Westlake. Ministry was in the building.
Jesus.
And Plant and Page used to come in and use his studio. They were broke.
So you were pretty much partying with all the rock stars at that point.
You know what? I really was partying with my friends. I mean, I still have lifelong friends 50 years later who I talk to every day from that time period of my life. And, I mean, I was backstage and I went here and I went there, but you know what? to me, that they were just guys making a living like me, and I was not overly impressed. I mean, there was one guy who it was a big deal to be backstage with. That was BB King.
Oh shit! Yeah,
That
wild.
was really something.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal. I mean,
Yeah, that man's
you
a
know, I
fucking
mean,
legend.
I probably turned down 99% of every meet and greet and backstage. Now, my daughter said, "Hey, Dad, can Ozfest is coming? Is there any way to get a meet and greet?" She was like 13 years old. So we were actually doing work for Black Sabbath. We were making belt buckles and candlesticks and all kinds of
Awesome.
crap. So I called my agent. My agent called Sharon's agent. And the whole thing was on a speakerphone. And
That's cool.
they said, "Oh, well, we got this guy Mark Thomas here." He goes, "Is that the guy that makes all that weird shit for us that I love?"
Oh yeah.
And they go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, what's he want?" And so, I said, my daughter asked if she could get a meet and greet and blah, 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 and that would be really cool for a dad to be able to do that for a daughter. So they were out at Tinley Park, the worst place in the world, and I was told to compound on, I don't know, door G or H, or I don't even remember. It was so long ago. And some big guy, about 6'8", 6'9", answers the door. "What do you want?" And I said, "Well, I was told to knock on this door." And, I heard her screaming. I heard Ozzy and her talking, and
Oh,
then I heard her
God.
screaming, "Is that Mark Thomas? Let him in, you asshole."
That's awesome, dude.
And so she actually had a chair behind the drapes, and Sharon took my daughter up on stage like it was her own daughter, took her hand, "Come on, sweetie," and put her on that. And she says, "You'll be behind the drapes. Nobody in the audience will see you, but you're going to be 15 feet away from the band the whole time they're on stage."
Wow.
That's amazing.
And so she looks at me and she says, "Now, where would you like to go sit?" And I hate Tinley Park. I hate the events there. And I said, "Any place with air conditioning and cold water and some soda." She says, "I'll throw you in one of the green rooms." So she actually put me in the band's green room, and
That's awesome.
but they were all on stage, and then we got done. I got my daughter. In fact, it's funny. My daughter is 36 years old, getting ready to make me a grandpa here soon.
Congratulations.
And
Congrats.
about I don't know 3-4 months ago, I said to her, I said, "Do you recall when you got to go backstage to Ozfest and meet Ozzy?" And she goes, "Dad, that was one of the most amazing moments of my life."
Wow.
Those core memories, man, as a kid,
Yeah.
when you meet your idols, dude, it's like you never forget those things.
You
man.
don't forget it. However, now you got to flip around. She's a 17, 18-year-old brat kid, and where do you go to rebel against your father? And she's getting drunk and loud and obnoxious, and finally she got thrown out of the house. And then a year later she came back. We kissed and made up, and we've had a real nice run. Typical mom and dad and daughter things.
Yeah.
She was drunk and stupid. So-
Yeah, we were all those kids.
I
at one
remember
point.
my parents friggin' throwing me out every time I got fucking shit.
Yeah, no,
shit-faced.
and you know what? If you go to newcity.com and you search Alexis Thomas, it's called Rebel Rebel. My dad owns the alley. So what? So where does a kid whose dad owns the alley go to rebel?
Oh shit, that's true.
The internet?
There was no internet back then, was there?
Yeah.
So she started publishing zines, and she was going to be a writer. Anyway, she's had a wonderful life. My kids have had great lives. I'm really proud of them. My wife and I have had a nice marriage. I always say it's the hardest job I've ever had, but it's the most rewarding job I've ever had. So we've had a good time. Yeah.
You're incredibly humble for, I was really pumping your tires earlier. I was like, you're a Chicago icon. Like you are, to a lot of people.
You know what?
But it's so
I'm
nice
just-
when we meet you and you're so humble and
You know
down to
what?
earth.
I'm not an icon. I'm just a guy. I have some shirts that say "Never Give Up." I've had 15 surgeries, and I have, I'm partially disabled. I mean, let's just put it on the table. I'm in a wheelchair in an airport, and I'm just a regular guy. And that's why when people start with the sirs and Mr. Thomas, I go, just please call me Mark.
Can we still call you the boss?
The boss is kind of an honorable thing, and it was the coach. That was back in the days when the Bears were winning, and
My
Ditka was there, and the mayor, And people started calling me the boss. But at that time, I had 7 stores at the corner of Belmont and Clark, and I was running that street. I mean, literally, other businesses came to me for help. I mean, we just did a map for Avondale, and somebody said, "Wow, that's really cool." And I just found the map I did for Lakeview 30 years ago. You know, and I always felt that if you helped your neighbors do better, the neighborhood did better, and then I did even better.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that as well? Because I know you're on a lot of boards for both, the Lakeview community.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
I've kind of left almost everything. Yeah, there's too many people in the room, too many opinions, and it's hard to get stuff done. And you know, I have to tell you, I mean, I believe in democracy, but when you're running a community organization or you're running a business organization, you really need a dictatorship. Because everybody's got an opinion and everybody wants to have something to say, and everybody disagrees or agrees, and it's hard to get things done. And I'll never forget, I was on 7 or 8 boards at one time, and one day I came home and my wife looks at me and she says, "How's your day?" And I go, "I got a fucking headache. I've had my fill." She goes, "Well, why do you do it?" And I go, "I'm done." And I resigned from all the boards and just kind of took a step back, and from time to time I'll get involved, but now I want to be the guy behind, I want to be the wizard behind the purple curtain. You need help, come to me, I'll help you. You need direction forming an organization, making it work, I'll be glad to help, but I don't want to be in a room. I don't want to be there. I don't want to listen to what everybody else has got to say. If they're smarter than me, then they don't really need to talk to me, do they? So I'd rather just be kind of like behind the scenes and help people. I don't want to run it. I don't want to be at the head of it.
Now, what's your opinion on the way that business is run nowadays? Obviously, with post-COVID, things on Amazon going crazy. Do you think it's harder for entrepreneurs to start up their own shop now?
You know what? Small businesses are getting slaughtered in America. The restaurants are getting slaughtered. I was involved in a committee with the Federal Reserve in Chicago. It's an unpaid. I was invited to be part of this committee, and I'll never forget, I think it was 6 months into COVID, and I looked at everybody, I go, "You guys don't understand the mental health issues that are going to happen as a result of everybody not being with each other, being at home, and blah, blah, blah." And as you know now, people don't want to go back to work. They want to sit at home. They want to, have babies and stay home. They don't want to drive. They don't want to take L's and everything that made America great. I mean, the networking around the water fountain, you got a business problem. It could take you 100 emails to solve it, or it could take you 10 minutes with 3 or 4 people bumping into each other at the water fountain, where somebody says, "Well, I got this problem with this account and I don't know how to handle this." And the other one goes, "Oh, I had that same problem a while ago. I did this and this and this." And the president of the company says, "That was great." It's over. You could take 100 emails to get there. It's terrible. I mean, I have to tell you, I mean, I get 400 or 500 emails a day. I got to delete 90% of them. It's just the time I'm spending to delete the garbage, and I mean, it's very unproductive.
Yeah, it's definitely in a different world. I mean, like e-commerce and everything. It's so, I don't even want to say it's white collar or blue collar. It's sweatpants. You know what I mean? People are doing that from sweatpants. But what you guys are doing is so blue collar. It's still till today. Like, it's so impressive to hear that you guys are still melting the metals and pouring the belt buckles and making the rings. Like,
I mean,
it's made in America.
We're getting, we're all getting a little old for doing it. I got to be honest with you. And I mean, there was, it was all over the news that, I'm hoping somewhere in the next 2 or 3 years to find somebody who could come in and, partner up and then eventually take over the business and continue our legacy. But I'll never give up control of the trademark, because just like I told you when you asked me to sign that release today, you're asking for rights to my name. And so I'm going to make sure that, I don't want to ever see that store close. I think it's important to society. But I'm also not going to sell it to somebody who's going to go out there and make me ashamed of what they're doing with my name. So I want to make sure, listen, let them all come. We don't judge people. We don't talk politics. I don't want to hear left, right, blue, red. Are you having a good time? Did you find something you want to buy? Is this your first time in the store? You know, those are things that are important to me. I don't want to talk. I don't want to be involved. And I ran against a sitting alderman, in Lakeview, because he was destroying the community that we had all kind of incubated together. And I just heard a few weeks ago, he owned Ann Sather's restaurant. We thought he was this cool locally owned guy. They're going to put two 15-story apartment buildings on Belmont. That's criminal, in my opinion.
Wow. Yeah. It's that people are making a lot of money off people living.
Yeah,
not
people,
owning.
but listen, money's important, but life is not all about money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So who would be the prime candidate for someone to take over then?
I don't know. I'm, talked to 2 or 3 people who seem to have some interest. I have a little bit of work to do before I think, I want to, remodel the front of the inside of the store. I want to add another 20 feet to the store. We've seen some changes in merchandising going on, and I'm trying to get ahead of that. You got a shirt on that's probably that's probably 25 years old, and you got a shirt on that's like 3 weeks old.
It's like it's like the generations that come in.
Yeah, I mean,
some merchandise changes, some merchandise stays the same because people love it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Before we get into the next chapter of the alley, I want to kind of talk a little bit about what the alley was before, or I guess like the old states of the alley. Like for example, you had Clark and Belmont before. That one, I feel like a lot of people know the alley.
Well, that was the best years of my life, other than now.
Okay.
Were the 90s.
Yeah.
And that's when it was all being built, and the punks were in the parking lot, and it was really gritty, and it was cool, and it was great.
Because I remember
Did you guys get the nickname Punkin' Donuts?
Punkin' Donuts.
Punkin' Donuts. What a great
Listen,
nickname.
if it hadn't been from Dave at Medusa's, there would be no alley. He created that scene. The lot was full of kids with mohawks, and we followed him over there. Dave was a visionary. Not a good business guy. Got into a fight with the alderman. The alderman brought me in to try to, make a peaceful coalition with Dave. And Dave kind of said, fuck him. And I go, Dave, it's the alderman. You really don't want to fight with the guy. By the way, he would have crowds waiting in the street to get into Medusa's at midnight.
Jeez.
And the alderman said, tell him to let the people in at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night so the neighbors aren't all screaming that there's noise waking them up at night. So Dave says, I'm a juice bar. What's he going to do? Take away my juice license? Bernie was a good guy. And Bernie was trying to be responsive to the residents, which is who voted for him, not Dave, not Mark. And so, and I warned Dave. I said, Dave, don't pick this fight. And Bernie went to the guy that owned the building and said, when's his lease over? And the guy says, 3 years. He says, you renew that lease. He says, I'll have every inspector in the city in your building.
Wow.
We'll tear you apart. He doesn't get his lease renewed. He's a problem for the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay? And so, 2 years later, Dave and I weren't friends or buddies, but Dave and I had suddenly I get a call from Dave. We were casual acquaintances.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, you warned me. I think I got a problem. I go, what happened? He goes, the landlord won't renew my lease. I said, I told you to make peace.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to give up your business. You didn't have to give up the essence of what Medusa's is. But you didn't have to stick your finger in the alderman's face and say, fuck you.
Yeah.
And he goes, is there anything you can do for me? And I said, Dave, I tried to do something for you 2-3 years ago, and you didn't want to hear it. You were king. And I said, you brought me over here. If there's anything, I said, I'll talk to Bernie, but Bernie's not going to say it's okay for you to disrupt a whole residential community. Those
Yeah.
people are entitled to sleep and have peace.
Yeah, you
By the
know.
way, you were entitled to have kids in there as long as they were over 18 till 6 o'clock in the morning if you wanted drinking juice.
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't have to, And so it's funny when Dave died in the middle of COVID, he had a congenital heart problem.
Mm-hmm.
A bunch of his followers called me and said, would you go over there and say a few words and light some candles and stuff? And I go, absolutely. And we went over there, and yeah, there was maybe, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 people there, and people were pretty shook up. And, we lit candles and we talked about good times at Medusa's, and he moved around. He had, he was Dave Medusa, and he was DJing here and DJing there. He had a business. He had a real live
Sure.
business, and you make unwise decisions sometimes.
It's fun.
Throughout the whole year, all the years of you being at the alley, you've had so many people come in, you've touched so many lives. Has there ever been a person who's come in the alley and it just like totally floored you, and you just got completely starstruck at who showed up?
No,
Not a single one.
no.
I mean, come on, you've had Bono in the shop. You've had
I mean, you know what? I mean, seriously. I mean, we did merchandising for the Misfits. Jerry only probably did 5 in-stores there. Jerry tried to fuck me. He's another one. We had a license with him, and took us 6 months to negotiate it. And suddenly he's got a new lawyer. He wants to change it. He was a gentleman in the store. He was good to the kids. You know what? They're just like me and you. And when they forget they're like you and me, then they become really less than we are.
It's true.
You know.
How do you deal with people like that forget that they're just regular people?
You know what? We had a system in the store when people who were known, people came into the store. You got to understand, I had almost up to 120 employees on that corner at any given moment for many, many years. We've had 3,000 employees. We actually just did a calculation once from when we got there in 87 to when we got there in 96, blah, blah, blah. We think 3 to 5 million people came walking through our doors.
Jesus.
Okay. So what we would do is, there were radios. I mean, we had 7 stores, 6 stores, 5 stores, 8 stores, depending on what was going on. And so if we needed help in the alley, so if somebody like Plant and Page, who were regular, I mean, Rob Zombie made me millions. I'll tell you about that in a minute. So what we would do is 2 or 3 of the assistant managers from the other store would come, and they'd all stand 10 or 15 feet back from whoever was shopping in the store. And if people went to like go ask them for an autograph, they'd say real quietly, "Could you let them enjoy their shopping experience? They just want to be like you and me. Let them enjoy their shopping experience. If they're out on the street, you want to ask them for an autograph. But in here, and so that's what we would do. We get, I got to tell you something. And it has happened to me. My wife's not particularly thrilled. I've probably been seen 3, 4 million, 5 million times over the last 6, 7 years on YouTube, not on YouTube, because I don't do that, on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I've become a recognized character, and, Adrian and I will be eating dinner, and, people will come up to the table, and, she'll go, is this ever going to stop? Or, and I mean, and people who perform give up their anonymity to entertain us and to make a lot of money, but to entertain us. I mean, does Mick Jagger need to go on tour?
Probably not, but he still
so
does.
why does Mick go on tour?
Because he loves it.
for the
He
people.
loves it.
He loves it. Yeah.
Why is the alley still open and I go down there and I'm in
love that
pain for my
stuff, bro.
surgeries? I love what I do. I love listen, I agreed to do this today because you guys are just 2 young kids. I mean, I got a podcast studio in my own building. The guy who owns the place is a buddy. We've tried to do some podcasts. We didn't get a lot of traction. I hope you get some traction, but I'm just, what? There were 2 older guys in my life. One of them saved me from my cocaine overdose. He was a police sergeant. The other one was a little old man who originally brought the alley to me as a customer, and had the contract and everything else. And I remember looking at both of them over those few years and saying, is there anything I can do to pay you back for everything you do? And they always said, just pay it forward, Mark.
Mm.
Paying it forward is what it's all about. One of them, died a year, 2 years later. He was my original partner. I wasn't talking to my father for a decade. I cried like a baby for weeks when he died. And the other guy was a police sergeant. It's a long story how I came to know him. But, when he passed away, and, his family called me, and I was in his home all the time. And his family called, and they knew that I'd just gone through this surgery, and they said, we know you can't be a pallbearer. Could you walk next to the casket? Just put your hand on the casket. And I go, of course I can. It'd be an honor. And, listen, like all relationships, he and I didn't talk for 4 or 5 years at one point, and we kissed and made up, and we never looked back. We didn't have to discuss what went wrong. You did this, you said that. We both decided, and listen, people don't understand that if you get into a fight with somebody that you care about, if you have a dispute, sometimes the best thing you can do is just move forward and let it go. Gets to the point you can't even. How did that fight start? How did that argument start? You know what? Just move forward.
Yeah.
This is what's the matter with America today. We have so much
People just won't let go.
diverse, feelings, and everybody thinks they're smarter, and the other guy's a jerk. And I mean, America is coming apart at the seams. America is the world's leading country, and we have wars breaking out all over the place. And I have to tell you, the only political statement I make, and nobody ever seems to want to disagree with me, is I say everybody that's an elected official is an asshole.
Yeah.
They're all there to get more power. They're all there to stay in office. They're all there to manipulate the world so their friends make a lot of money, so they'll get taken care of. And, my dad was the Lake County, Indiana coroner at one time. He ran for sheriff, but he was a doctor, and he did it for community service. When I ran those chambers of commerce, I did it for community service. It wasn't about having power, and everybody is, you see all these people talking about, this or that, and I'm not even going to discuss those subjects. They're all bad people. It's just horrible that we're in our, I don't know, 5th, 6th, 7th election cycle, I don't know, 3rd, 4th election cycle for sure, where we're saying, well, who's the best of the worst? It's a terrible thing that we're there. I mean, by the way, if you ever watch the House of the Royals in England, they televise it. These people are acting like clowns, screaming and yelling at each other, calling each other's name. I mean, how do you expect to have a nice world if you don't respect each other?
It's impossible, man. Nobody respects each other anymore. Everybody thinks they're like smarter than like everybody, specifically politicians. I mean,
it really sucks.
What would you like to see the future of America look like?
You know what?
I see your "We the People's" tattoo as well.
Yeah, that's because when I ran for alderman, my campaign manager got mad at me, but I already had other ink, and it's just like everybody's forgotten. It's about we the people. It's about us. It's not about those people. All work for us, and I got to tell you, if I could fire them, I'd fire them all. I mean, it's shameful. It really is shameful. It's all about we the people. I mean, look at the roots of our country. We didn't want the British taxing us. We didn't want the British telling us how to live. That's why people got on boats and came to America and started from scratch. And now we got everybody telling us everything. I mean, my God, they want me to pay $250,000 in real estate taxes on a building with 300 musicians and alleys and musicians and artists in a store called The Alley. How is that right?
Shit.
But yet, Northwestern Hospital turned $1 billion profit. It's called Overage. They're a nonprofit corporation. And they got called out for making $1 billion, and they said, "Oh, well, we did 700 million in charity work." Listen, I'm a Northwestern patient. My doctors are all at Northwestern. But it's sad that they're just bleeding everybody and the insurance companies. I mean, it costs $5 to make a dose of insulin. And people were dying because they were trying to get $700-800 for a dose of
I
insulin.
was gonna say, yeah. It's
I mean,
just
that's criminal.
Criminal.
yeah.
Yeah.
Damn, dude. Earlier you mentioned something about like a cocaine overdose, and we like to encourage kids here to like not do drugs for that reason like that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and you know, it took me, I don't know, it took me 4 or 5 years, 6 years, 7 years.
Yeah, my next question was gonna be, what led you to steer away from a life like that?
It was the second time I went to St. Joseph Hospital, and I heard the nurse say, "Oh, that asshole's back." And a couple of minutes later, I heard her say, "Get the crash cart. We're gonna fucking lose him."
Oh shit! So you were conscious while you were in the hospital?
Yeah, I was conscious, and I was hearing what was going on, and you know, they filled me full of fluids, and I sat there for 7 or 8 hours till I came down, and I walked out, and got to tell you, I went cold turkey. I mean, it was a bitch. That next 3 4 weeks was just awful. You know, it was hard to sleep. It was hard to work. It was hard to do anything. And I'll never forget, it was 3 4 years after I'd gone straight. We went to see Scarface. And I don't know if you've seen the movie, but there's this one at the end of the movie, right before, you know, they're shooting up the place. He takes this big old beautiful wooden box full of cocaine. He dumps it on the table, and he sticks his face in it, and he's snorting it up. And this is before I was with my wife, and I was out on a date. I don't remember who the hell it was, to be blunt. And suddenly I broke out in sweats. I could smell the cocaine in the movie theater. I smelled the cocaine.
Yeah.
Just think about that. 2 3 years after I'm straight, and I could still recall that smell.
Yeah, that's pretty intense, man. Coming from somebody, I used to do it a lot too back in the day. But what do you think led to you actually like getting into that kind of stuff? What were you trying to like fill something up? Were you
Well,
just having
actually,
fun,
you know, I spent
like
$40,000 or
most kids?
$50,000 in therapy, trying to find out what happened. You know, listen, um, loved my dad, loved my mom. You know, were they the best parents in the world? Nah, I'm a much better parent than my parents were. But I got bruised. I think the children always get bruised in these divorces. And listen,
Yeah.
my wife and I talk all the time about, you know, how, you know, we're so proud we made it through 38 years. There's been plenty of screaming and yelling in our life, but not a lot. But, you know, the kids know we love each other. You know, Adrian's been through 15 surgeries with me. You know, I've been through some illness issues with her, and we're so proud that we hung in there. And we see people our age who are single and they're living, you know, this so-called life, and it's lonely. It's not mentally healthy. And Adrian and I got lucky, but it took a lot of work. Being married's the hardest job I ever had, but it's the most rewarding job I ever had. And
What do you think kept you guys married for so long?
Well, you know, in both of our opinions, for sure, family. I wanted family, she wanted family. And, you know, in those first 15 or 20 years, the children were the glue that held the marriage together. You know, we loved each other, but, you know, man, I was flying all over the world. She was taking care of the kids. She was helping in the store. I mean, you know, it was, you know, so you know, I know that a lot of people, and they have that right to choose it, by the way, not to have children. But, you know, I think it's an important part of society. It was just so important to us. You know, we just had one of our daughters stay with us for a few months. She moved back from being in Arizona because she got fed up with COVID in Chicago, and she just wanted to be able to go outside to the pool. You know, and she came back and she said, "Do you mind if I stay with you guys for a few months? I want to find a job." She wants to work in person. Her new job, she didn't get that, but That was her wish. She began to recognize that working out of her house wasn't a good time. And, it was actually a privilege to have her around. I do remember at a certain point, Adrian and I were having one of those discussions, and, she suddenly, like, kind of popped in the middle of it. And I go, hold on. Mom and I have been married 38 years. It's okay. We love each other. We can disagree. Let us take. When you've been married 38 years, you have the right to an opinion. Until then, and she kind of backed away, and listen. And by the way, she wasn't doing anything wrong. She's an adult, so she saw us arguing, and she thought she was gonna kind of get in there and make it better. And the only people who are going to make it better are the people who might be angry at each other at that moment. They have to work it out. Adrian and I have learned to work it out.
That's good.
It's between A and B. See your way out of it. Right?
Huh?
It's between A and B. See your way out of it. Adrian and Boss. I'm kidding.
Yeah, no.
I'm totally kidding.
Adrian is. I couldn't have done what I did if it wasn't for Adrian, and Adrian couldn't have done what she did if it was. I mean, we were a partnership. And my wife's in there every morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, dressing mannequins, dressing the store, hanging stuff, vacuuming the floor. I mean, does she have to do that? No. Could we pay somebody else? Yeah. She probably wouldn't be happy with the way it got done. She'd have an opinion about it. But yeah, we're partners. Now, when she was raising our kids and they were young, and I had a staff of 100 some people, it was a little different back then, but we were lucky that we could afford for her to stay home and raise our children. That was really a great thing for my kids. She's an incredible woman, an incredible mom, an incredible wife, and the result of that is we have two wonderful kids. I have a wonderful son-in-law. I'm going to have a grandchild. There's no perfect relationships, but you got to work at it.
I like how you call yourselves partners, too. I see a lot of couples doing that nowadays. Instead of, this is my spouse, this is my wife, this is my partner.
Adrian and I were partners before partner was hip. By the way, she's, when I met her, she was kind of a quiet person, and that shit flew out the door, and suddenly she'd stand toe-to-toe with me if she didn't agree with me. She had a set of balls.
Earlier, you mentioned that at some point the alley had closed down for a while, and then you guys.
So yeah, we
reopened.
closed up in January of 2016. They were building that awful Target building next to us. I was at the beginning of a group of surgeries, and so we shut the store down for 7 or 8 months, and I got the surgery done. And actually, twice in my life, I've had a period where my primary business wasn't open. And both of those times allowed me to come back and be bigger, better, and stronger again. And so Adrian and I, we took some time off. We traveled. I did the surgery. I recovered. And, and then we dove back in. And our first attempt was we wanted to combine food and retail and liquor, and and that didn't work out so well, and I'm not even going to tell that story. Then we took over a little store that had been taboo over on Belmont because we thought Lakeview was in our blood. And we did okay, but we began to realize that it wasn't our Lakeview anymore, and that our social media was doing well enough. I mean, my God, we're in a warehouse building. There's no retailers near me. There's one restaurant on one end of the block. There's like a WeWork kind of place. There's a dance school. I mean, people get out of Ubers all day long to come to the alley. They take buses. They ride bikes. I mean, we're not relying on anybody's traffic.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, I would, before I could drive and whatnot, way back in the day, I would take like a bus. It would take me like an hour or something just to get to the alley. It was totally worth it, man. Like I would go in there and I would spend, hours two, just looking at everything, all the cool designs, and this was back when you guys used to do like piercings and tattoos and stuff.
Yep.
That was cool, man. And then you guys had that cool little room in the back.
You know, I got to tell you, one of the greatest stories, and I've probably heard it 30, 40, 50 times, is, you know, there was a few churches within like 2 or 3 blocks of us. We opened at noon on Sunday, and I've had these kids who walked up to me and they'd say, yeah, I'd go to, you know, my parents would make me go to church, and then I'd tell them I had to go to the bathroom, and then I'd go out the back door and I'd run over to the alley and I'd buy a couple buttons and a sticker and, you know, run right back to the church 15, 20 minutes later, and, you know, my mom or dad would say, you know, where were you? Mom, I was in the bathroom. Could I have a little privacy, please? And, you know, and I mean, I didn't hear it once. I didn't hear it twice. I mean, I heard it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, I heard a bunch of people who told me, hundreds of times I've heard, when I got my license when I was 16, I took the keys to my parents' car and I drove to the alley, and I got in so much trouble, and it was so worth it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of great stories, and, you know, I walk through that store and I see parents who could have had their, and people tell me that their father took off their belt and gave them a whipping for going down. And I see those parents bringing their children in and sharing the alley with them.
Wow.
That's wonderful,
So
man.
that's what keeps me, that's the magic sauce that keeps me going down there.
That's
That's
awesome.
awesome. That's the American dream in action.
Yeah, I remember buying a bong from you guys like
Yeah.
a long time ago.
Hey, the 5 things I've heard the most. I bought my first bong from you.
Nice.
I bought my first Dr. Martens from you. I bought my first leather coat from you.
Yeah, that too.
The story about being 16 and stealing the keys to the car. And I mean, I've heard those things hundreds of times.
Dude, man, yeah.
Wow.
People did that a lot.
You know,
And the last thing, which was most important, is, you know, people didn't understand me. And when I came into the alley, everybody embraced me. Whatever I said, whatever I did, however I dressed, whatever it was, the alley was the place that I felt safe.
Yeah, man. Yeah, especially like talking as somebody that used to do the exact same thing. I would have my friends be like, "Why are you wearing this? Why are you dressing like that? Why do you like this and that?" I would go to the alley. Everybody was, you know, understanding of who you were because we were all the same people, man. Like there was no
We're all-
judgment. There was no like,
We
you
all,
know.
we all bleed red.
Yeah, exactly. And that's literally
know?
what drew me to there, you know,
Yeah.
besides the cool merch, but like just the community and the atmosphere of just, you know, having
a-
like-minded people.
sanctuary for weirdos, freaks, and misfits.
Absolutely. A safe place.
Safe
Not
place.
a sanctuary, a safe place.
There you go.
Safe place.
And that is, that's who we are. And that's why you know, I'm sitting here with a pillow so that my back doesn't hurt more. And, you know, do I need to do what I'm doing with you guys today? Why am I doing this? I'm trying to help 2 young guys.
lure
And we
them in.
appreciate it,
Well,
man.
no, but I'm saying, I've been doing this for 40 years.
Nice.
48 years. You know, we've been helping people, and, you know, there's a dude who's got his own little streetwear brand, and he was my tenant for a while, and it didn't work out. And, you know, black dude, he's just a cool guy, man, and he's been out of my building 2 or 3 years. And, you know, I looked at him as he was leaving my building, and I said, I'm not done with you. I'm here for you. I got your back. You know, and I saw earlier, and I mean, and this guy is starting to become a real live brand, and famous people are wearing his clothes. And he looks at me and he says, you know, Mark, he says, what's some old white guy doing trying to help me out when I can't get a lot of black people to help me out? Why do you care? And I go, you're young, you're trying to make this work. Somebody did it for me, I'm doing it for you. I don't want nothing from you, do I? Have I ever asked you for anything? He goes, Mark, you never even took a T-shirt or a hat. I had to give it to you. And I go, okay, I'm proud of you. Keep working. And by the way, I spent 45 minutes on the phone with him Sunday. And my wife said, I thought you were taking Sundays off. I said, that wasn't work. She goes, well, you were talking about somebody's work. And I go, yeah, I'm trying to help somebody, honey.
You're a man of the people, Mark. That's
B
awesome.
is a really cool dude. He's got this brand called Chai, C-H-I, and He's making, joggers and baseball caps, and it's streetwear, and I'm really proud of who B is, and I'm proud that he and I have maintained a relationship, and he's been out of my building for 2 or 3 years, and he'll text me, and sometimes I don't get back to him for a day. I'll say, "Hey man, I'm sorry." He goes, "Mark, don't be sorry. You're calling me back. That's cool."
Yeah, man. Man, you should run for president, man.
No, I don't want that. I don't want that job. I don't know who would want that job. Anybody who wants that job's sick.
Oh shit, yeah.
I can agree. I do have a question. When I told my family that I was interviewing you, my aunt had asked me to ask you about the legacy of the gargoyles at the alley.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was that was almost a more fun part of my life than the alley in many ways.
Oh shit.
Okay. So I love to be creative, and I hired sculptors, and Walt Disney called us and said, "Hey, we're going to do a series about gargoyles. Would you be willing to send us one of each of all your gargoyles just so we can have some characters in the room when we're designing our characters?"
Wow.
How about that for an honor? Now they ended up not using our gargoyles, and gargoyles ended up not to be a successful series, but man, we sold Target, we sold Spencer, we sold Hot Topic. I had distributors in England, and I was rummaging around flea markets, and I'd find like broken statues or little statues that were 80, 90, 100 years old. I'd bring it back. We'd make a mold. It was neat. And then the whole gargoyle and column thing just crashed and burned. Suddenly one day it was over, and I was in England, and I used to go to Camden Locks twice a year because we were there to show we were selling our merchandise all over Europe. And one of my friends had a little shop. She said, "I want you to meet my friend Terry. He brings in this cool stuff from Bali, and you told me that the gargoyles aren't selling anymore." And I said, "Okay." And so I met Terry, and next thing I know, man, he's showing me stuff in his shop, and I said, "Well, I could use 50 of that, 30 of this, and 20 of that, 40 of this." And about a week later, I got an email from him, and he says, "That's about 30,000. It's gonna take 50 grand to fill a container." He said, "I can put an order in for all this stuff." And now I trusted the folks that introduced me to him. And so Adrian and I jumped on an airplane. Never been to Bali before in our life, and we went from family workshop to family workshop buying stuff, and it was like the time of my life. I love Bali, and I don't think because of my health with my legs and my back and my neck and everything else, to me, Bali is the place that cleanses my soul the most, and I very much doubt that I will ever get a chance to get back to Bali. I would give anything in the world to go back there. And they're the kindest, gentlest people you've ever met in your life, and we had a ball. And after a while, I had carvers working for me. We were making the piercing jewelry was all being made in Bali. So I went to Bali, and I went, and we had the biggest assortment of piercing jewelry, and we had a ball. So, gargoyles were an important part of who the alley was, and then Bali became an even more important part because, my God, the piercing studio almost was our biggest generator after a while in the alley, more than shoes and more than leathers. And, I was flying to Bali. We were making our own piercing jewelry in Bali. Tell me that's not fucking cool.
Yeah, that's dope.
And it was funny. Tampak Sarang is maybe 7-8 blocks long and maybe 5-6 blocks on either side. It's a little village. And, the kids would ride around on motorbikes, and they knew who the customers were. And suddenly, as I'd come into town in a taxi and I'd get out and I'd start going from store to store, you'd see all the stores kept their lights off until a customer came around. Suddenly you'd see all the lights on the street, and the kids would be grabbing me by the hand going, boss, come to my mom's store, my dad's store, and by the way, you didn't do business in the store. They lived behind there. So if you came in and you bought 10 or 20 pieces, yeah, you did business in the store, but I'd be, "Well, I need 50 of this, 50 of that." And they'd say, "Well, boss, can we get you a Coke?" And my wife and I would go, and you'd take off your shoes and you'd sit in the back, and they'd get you a chair and a cold Coke. You never drank the water there.
Yep. Of course not.
One of my favorite places in Bali was the Monkey Forest. It was a religious place, and I'd go up there, and I'll never forget. Adrian and I must have gone to the Monkey Forest, I don't know, 15, 20 times, and and I got pictures. I got hundreds of pictures of the monkeys.
Nice.
And I'll never forget one day I was like taking a picture of the monkey, and the one monkey grabbed my iPhone from me, and Adrian had a bundle of bananas under her arm.
Oh shit.
And she goes, "How you gonna get the phone back?" I says, "Give me a banana, babe." So I held the banana out, and the monkey literally with one hand grabbed the banana, and he dropped the phone and he walked away. He was a little gangster.
Oh shit.
Gangster monkeys. But you can't do that shit in America.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
That's awesome.
That's incredible. And you still have the gargoyles up on top of the roof till today, too.
Yeah, those are Halloween gargoyles that I bought at a Halloween show 40 years ago. They're made out of fiberglass. They're not what we made. But yes, the gargoyle became very representative of who the alley was.
Cool. Do you think Bailey's am I pronouncing that right? Is it Bailey or Bali?
Bali.
Bali. Is that your favorite place you think you've ever visited?
That's my favorite place in the whole world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it there. It's just fabulous. You could walk down the street, and I mean, the food is amazing. The people are just so kind. It's just, I mean, people will do anything to keep you, they want their customers, they want their visitors to be joyful and having a good time.
That's cool. How long is that flight?
Well, from our front door, and we would basically stop in Bangkok for 3 or 4 days.
Nice.
So, because we got a lot of silver jewelry in Bangkok. So from our front door to the hotel room in Bangkok, it was 26 hours. That included a layover either in Hong Kong or Tokyo. And then we'd spend 3, 4 days in Bangkok. We'd run around Khao San Road, which is where all the silver guys were. We'd buy. I'd walk around with $10,000-$20,000 in cash buying silver jewelry. Jesus. And then I had a guy who was a regular provider of business, and I'd take it all to him. He'd ship it all back. It'd get home before I got home.
Nice.
Then we'd jump on another plane. We'd go from Bangkok. By the way, at the time we stayed at some of the finest hotels in the world. This is 30 years ago. Nice. $100 a night.
Jesus.
I mean, I'll never forget. We flew into Hong Kong, and Adrian and I had probably been married, I don't know, 7, 8 years, and we were really this was one of those trips that two people in love really find out how much they love each other. And so we stayed at the Peninsula, which probably is $1,000 a night today, and back then it was probably $150 a night. And for $50, they picked you up in a white vintage Rolls Royce.
Wow.
So I didn't tell Adrian that was coming, right? And we get picked up with this vintage Rolls. Well, actually, first we're in Bangkok. We went to Bangkok before we, we were in Bangkok. And so they would pick us up in a vintage Rolls Royce.
Nice.
And it was just like, she was like awestruck. And then the Peninsula is one of the most famous hotels in the world. High tea at the Peninsula. You had to make reservations months early, and
wow.
it was, I don't know, $50 a person. Back then it's probably $175 a person, and the rooms were just fabulous. Then we started staying. Then we flew to. We came in another time, and we stayed at the Oriental Hotel, and they called themselves the best hotel, the finest hotel in the world. And they picked you up in a white Mercedes Benz, and it was $150 a night for a room. And I'll never forget the manager there. He would greet you and take your passports, and then he would take you to your room. You didn't touch your luggage. Everything was done for you.
Wow.
And you'd get into your room, and then there'd be a knock, and a busboy would walk in, and he'd have this big, huge bowl of just beautiful strawberries and a bowl of
Nice.
whipped cream, and he'd say, "The manager sent you some fruit to refresh yourself." You
Wow.
know, it was just incredible. I mean, and we weren't living like big people for big money. I mean, this is just the way it was.
Like over there. That's
I
fucking
mean,
nice.
it's been a few years, but I would say up until 5 or 6 years ago, and I hadn't stayed in that hotel in 25 years, I used to get a birthday card every year signed by the whole front, of the house staff from the
Jesus.
Oriental Hotel.
That's nice.
You're like a famous world traveling pirate.
It was cool, man.
That's so
It
cool.
was great life.
Yeah, man, it makes me want to go out and travel more, man.
Yeah, right.
You got any advice for kids that want to go out and travel more?
Do it.
Do it. That's it. Just do
Adrian and I used to say we live to travel.
it. Nice.
When you're at home every day and you're making breakfast, eating lunch, making dinner, going to work, doing this, doing that, man, when you break out of that, it's something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good life.
That's so cool. Is there are there any topics that you want to discuss on the show as well? Anything that we kind of haven't brushed over?
I think that there's not enough respect for small business anymore in America. Everybody wants to be like Elon Musk and Bill Gates, and everybody wants to be a billionaire. And those people are real pieces of garbage.
Yeah.
And they have their own agendas, and their agendas are not kindness. They just want more and more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
You get people who've figured out how to open up offshore trusts and never pay their taxes, and yet when you and I get a paycheck in America, the taxes come out every week when you get your paycheck.
Yep.
Those guys all got scams.
Mm-hmm.
And the people in Washington D.C., they don't do anything about it. So I don't think there's enough respect for small businesses. I don't think there's enough respect for work. And it's all gotten scrambled. Everybody thinks that there's supposed to be that they're owed something. Nobody's owed anything. You work for it, you earn it. I mean, gosh. The first year I was out of my mother's house, the day after I graduated, I had the guys who worked for me. We put a trailer in the back of my '65 Chevy, and we went upstairs. We moved everything out of my bedroom, my bed, my dresser, everything, my clothes, and I slept in the front of my factory for, I don't know, probably the first year. The place had cockroaches and mice, and and that's what it took to get started.
Yeah,
I
man.
mean, do I want to go back and do that? Nah, I don't think so. But gosh, that's part of who makes me who I am. I mean, my first apartment was $238 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment. And, I mean, it's been a real climb.
We all gotta start
Nobody
somewhere.
gave me anything. I earned it all.
Hell yeah. What's like a piece or a couple pieces of advice that you would give to a young entrepreneur trying to start off any
Well,
business, I guess?
Be prepared to fail.
Yeah.
Be prepared to pick yourself up. Be prepared to start again, and never give up.
Yeah.
People say, "Well, how did you get where you got?" And I go, "Well, you never look backwards. You never look down.
Mm-hmm.
You look backwards and you look down, you're going to trip and fall. You just keep, listen. Uh, you know, look at Zuckerberg. What a piece of shit. Seriously, all these billionaires, they set up, they're giving money away to charity. Yeah, because they get to write it off their taxes and, blah, blah, blah. In the meantime, they buy an island here. And they've all found a way to disrupt what was a really wonderful country.
Mm-hmm.
But by the way, let's be honest. The robber barons were here when America started.
Mm.
The Rothschilds and, the guy and the oil barons. Those guys came over from England and their families 300 years later are still living off. Our governor has trusts that were set up 100 years ago in the Grand Caymans by his family,
It's wild, man.
right? And they're not there to protect the money. They're there to avoid taxes.
Yeah.
That's our governor.
Yeah.
Right. Pritzker's got a lot of dough.
He's part of the Hyatt family, and that's okay. Listen, being wildly successful is cool. Pay your fucking taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pay your taxes.
Amen to that.
I mean, again, can you imagine? They're asking me to pay I was paying $60,000 a year for real estate taxes. You know, it went from 38 to 48 to 58 to 68 for 20 years. You know,
That's
and now they want me to
insane.
pay $250,000 a year.
Fuck
So
all that.
how do I you know, that's $200 a month for every studio in my building. So if I walk up to somebody who's paying me $500 a month and I say, well, now it's $700 a month, how long do you think they're going to stay in the building?
Probably not that long.
Yeah. I raised rent $50. I had 5 people say, well, I can't afford that, I'm moving out. $50.
Yeah.
I wasn't asking them for 100 or 200. You know, I was going to raise it 50 this year, 50 next year, 50 the year after, and by that time, then it starts all over again. They raise my taxes again. It's bullshit.
It's insane.
Yeah.
In lighter news, when did you get your first hearse?
Well, my dad was the Lake County, Indiana coroner, and I had opened up, I'd taken over the alley, and I was doing my whole thing, and my dad had a bunch of used car dealers that were across the street from his medical building, and my dad was, you know, he was a character. Everybody kind of knew him, kind of like me. And so I said, Dad, can you call one of those guys up? I need like a used van. He goes, why drive a used van? He says, I can get you a Cadillac hearse from one of the, you know, so he was the coroner. He did autopsies. You know, he says, those cars are 30 years old. They're Cadillacs. They don't have 30,000 miles on them. You can buy them for $250. My first hearse was $300.
Wow.
Nice.
It was cheaper than buying a van. That's how it all started. Then I started to decorate it. Then it became part of who we were.
You put a lot of merch in the back of a hearse too.
Oh man, I'll never forget. We went up. My in-laws lived in Door County, and we went to. You know, we were going to go antiquing, so we decided to drive the hearse up there. And my sister-in-law went to the school. The school was K through 12. Maybe there were 400 or 500 kids in it, and I don't know. She was 12 or 13 years old, and she says, "Would you drive me to school?" I go, yeah, come on, jump in. So I drove her to school. The whole school emptied out on the lawn to see the hearse. Principal comes running out, raging at me. Thank you for destroying the first period of all of these kids' day, creating this circus on my lawn. I said, oops.
Kids like it.
Yep, kids love it.
Kids love it. And now every time you have an anniversary party for the alley, you guys bring hearses in. Can you tell us a little bit
Well,
about
we
the
do
party
different
sales?
things. We brought in Batmobiles. We brought in the Dragula car. We did a hearse show. You know, we're always, you know, you got to entertain people.
Because you got a big lot over there too. Next.
Well, part of it's mine, part of it's still the church's. I bought part of it because the church was in financial trouble, and if they didn't come up with $250,000, they were gonna lose their church. So they asked me if I would buy that one lot to help them out so they could keep the church open. So we bought the lot.
And what other events have you hosted in there?
We've been doing it. You know, the alley's only been there 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we did a lot of events at Belmont and Clark. You know, we used to get those big spotlights like you see in the sky. And, you know, we did, God, I just found the artwork from a 20th anniversary ad in the Reader. I mean, you know, we were giving away free gargoyles, free pairs of Dr. Martens. We've always done that shit.
Speaking of the artwork, you guys have really cool shirt designs. Who designs all the shirt designs? Is it you guys?
I am the art
outsourced?
director, and I find people that do cool stuff, and then I say, well, I'm looking for this, and hey, look at this guy's artwork. Please don't copy it, but I like the idea of that angry cat.
This is awesome. I love
Right?
It fits
And-
you very well, Jack.
And so,
it.
you
Some
know,
big pussy.
I saw an angry cat. I said, let's make some angry cats. They started selling.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have one shirt design that you think is the top seller?
Our number one seller right now is a little black cat with an alley. Chicago over it. It's selling better than the Alley logo, which has never happened in 40 years.
Yeah.
So that was my first clue to make some more cat shit.
Yeah, I think I got one of those shirts. Well, I don't know if it's the one you're talking about. I know I have one with a black cat on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one's
Very
cool.
Do you have a personal favorite?
I like my Frankenstein shirt.
We were looking at that one earlier.
Yeah,
I got a Frankenstein tattoo right here.
I like my Frankie shirt. I like the logo. I don't know. You know what? I just pulled 40 shirts out of my closet today, and we donated. Somebody's gonna be buying my used Alley shirts from some place, and
Nice.
It just depends on what came off the press today and what I like. We're doing these big monster shirts now where we're printing from sleeve to sleeve and top to bottom. So, I got like 3 of these big, huge Grim Reaper shirts. I mean, so, I need, I get bored. It's something new.
Nice.
And can you tell us the Rob Zombie's leather jacket story as well?
So, Zombie was a regular in the store, and we had this leather jacket with white bones on it. And it was not a big hit. Part of it is it wasn't cheap. So he comes in the store, and again, back then we had 2-3 people so he could shop and enjoy himself. And he bought the jacket in the store. No big deal. But when he got on MTV and did a video when MTV was a big deal, and he wore that fucking jacket on MTV, we did millions of dollars in that Rob Zombie jacket over the next 3-4 years. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
We couldn't get the shipments in quick enough.
They're cool. They're really, really cool.
And you know what? We didn't have them for about 15 years, and people kept asking, so we started making them, and we made them with... and it was funny. I always thought it was a little bit loud and obnoxious. And so what I did was I had the guy who was making my jackets. I says, I want black bones on a black leather. And he goes, well, you're not going to be able to say. I said, just make me. It's just for me. Just make me my fucking jacket. And now... here we are 30 years later, and now the black bones is almost selling better than the white bones.
Wow.
Jesus. That's awesome. Cool. Do you remember what your first initial thought was when you saw that on MTV? Where you were like, oh shit, someone's actually wearing my merch?
We had a lot of people wear our merch on MTV. Ace Frehley wore our shirts all the time on MTV. I mean,
Ace Frehley from Kiss?
Yeah.
Fuck, dude.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's we keep bringing the shirt back that he wears, but people don't get it. They don't buy it.
That's so cool. Do you happen to have anyone out there who's, pretty big name who represents the Alley the most, perhaps?
No, not really. I mean, number one, a lot of those guys have gotten to the point where they really just can't go out in public.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember when Bono used to walk up and down Clark Street. He'd go to Chicago Comics, he'd go to the Smuggler, he'd go to the Alley. I mean, it was 20, 30 years ago, and he was a pretty famous guy back then, but people tended to respect his space. I'd look out the window and I'd see the big black Cadillac limo parked across the street. I knew Plant and Page were in the store. Ministry was in our building on Lake Street. Every time they come through, they come through. They're just people. They're customers. They're people. We treat them well, and we try to make sure they have a nice time and that nobody interferes in their, them having a good time.
That's good.
Cool, man.
Safe place.
Safe place,
Safe
even for
place.
rock stars.
Very cool.
Sweet.
Do you happen to have a favorite show you've ever gone to?
Well, it's a cover band.
Mm,
So I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan.
nice.
And I've been to this show maybe 4 or 5 times. We were actually just at that show out at the Horseshoe Casino in Hammond, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called Brit Floyd.
Oh,
and
yeah.
these guys put on a show that is just unbelievable. And it was funny because like the guy that was head of entertainment, his wife was head of the theater, and I walked in and they're all going, "Oh my God, you own the alley!" And it was like, you know, we'd actually bought the pre-show tickets, which I would never do again, but you know, I ended up. I mean, almost everybody that was there were all old alley customers, so I always walk
Nice.
around with a bag of our coins that we give away and free T-shirt
Hell
cards.
yeah.
And we were taking pictures with our customers. It was a blast.
Awesome.
Brit Floyd is really good. I saw them at the Chicago Theater. It was the first show that opened up post-COVID
Really,
at the theater. Was Brit Floyd.
their light show is just unbelievable.
It is. It's so cool.
Yeah.
They do a really good job.
Yeah, I'm a Pink Floyd guy. I'm a Rolling Stone guy. I mean, you know, we had a great show. A buddy of mine had gotten tickets 10th row center for Rolling Stones at Soldier Field.
Wow.
And the bank had turned him down for a couple $1 million loan right then, and they were still trying to kiss and make up with him, so they got him to these tickets. And so he calls me up. He goes, "How'd you like to be 10th row center for Rolling Stones?" "Well, I love the Rolling Stones." I said, "Yeah, it's cool." So my buddy, the police sergeant who's passed away, so anyway, he looked at me. He said, "Listen, here's the deal. I got the tickets. You figure out where we're parking, what we're eating, and how we're getting into Soldier Field." So I called my buddy up, and he said, "Well, park right behind the Kraft building. Go across the street. I think it was called Dick's Last Resort. We ate ribs and burgers and everything." And then he took me in, lights and sirens down Lakeshore Drive to the back door of Soldier Field, pounded on the door with his stick. They opened the door. He said, "You know, VIPs, open the door." And we got in the back door, and we went out to our seats. And, you know, when we got all done, we called, and he was off, but he sent another guy to pick us up. But, you know, I probably not supposed to tell those stories, are you?
On this show, we'll accept it. I was just telling Jay, I come from a cop family, and there's an acronym, RHIP, stands for Ranking Has Its Privileges. So if you got some good ranking, you can get some good privileges.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It doesn't hurt to know a guy.
Well, he saved my life. You know, he and his wife used to sit on the phone with me when I was all fucked up on coke, and you know they have, you know, I had no family back then. My family, you know, I was there for Christmases and Thanksgiving and birthdays, and you know they helped save my life.
Nice.
Good folks.
It is. Do you have any advice for folks who are kind of going through something that you were going through?
Well, that's a hell of a question. I was I didn't feel good about myself because of what happened with my parents' divorce. So I was trying to find another place to be. That's what drugs represented. And I was with some friends, and we were standing on the top of a mountain in Maui, and they were all smoking a joint. Somebody hands me a joint, and I go, "Nah, doesn't get any better than this." And they go, "Come on, take it. You know, let's take." I said, "Yeah, I was never. Listen, I wasn't a cannabis guy. Quaaludes, coke, I was in." You know, there just was. You know, reality is really the greatest drug in the world. You know, I'm glad that cannabis has become legal. I think it's great for a lot of people. I think it's great that people aren't going to get arrested for it. So, you know, I mean, what the hell? It's less harmful than alcohol.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, I guess I'm getting a little tired.
Yeah, I think it's just getting about that time. I think we should start wrapping up here.
Yeah.
Mark, sincerely, thank you so much for joining us today.
We had a good time.
Really
I hope you
it.
guys become a success. I hope you make this work. And then I hope you find other younger guys than you, and you help them out too.
Yeah, man.
It's the game plan.
Pay it forward.
Absolutely.
Not pay it back. Pay it forward.
There you go. My mistake.
Pay it forward.
You know, that's a part of what we do here at Hawkwinds is that, you know, me and Jay both had this idea that there in the entertainment business, and no matter what aspect, there's so many crabs in a bucket, people trying to pull you down. And that's kind of the basis on why we started this show, was to give people a platform to get up on here and promote their business and to promote their art and to promote whatever show they might be doing, whatever idea they have. And
see, me, I want to promote kindness. I want to promote understanding.
Yeah.
I want to promote loving each other. I want to promote the fact that, you know, we should all recognize that all these politicians suck.
Yeah.
Amen to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any last words for America or for anyone, all these people listening out here?
Well, if you don't vote, you're an asshole and you're part of the problem. We all have to start to vote. That's how we can make changes happen. And, I ran for alderman. My wife has never forgiven me for doing that. But, people who can run should run, but they should run for the right reason. That is, we the people. That's what it's all about. It's not about them. It's about us.
Mm-hmm.
And they've all forgotten that. It's about us. It's about the American citizens. It's not about the congressmen and the senators and the president and all the rest of those people. That's all a fucking charade.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very wise words. I appreciate that. Well, what do you say, fellas? Let's wrap it up. I got a puppy back home. I got to go.
Yeah,
take
I
care
know.
of.
I'm pooped. Long day for me.
Well, again, Mark, thank you so much for joining us. For all of you out there who are interested in visiting the alley, check it out. 2620 West Fletcher in Chicago. If you freaking dare. Did I do it right?
There you go.
Right? Okay. All right. If you fucking dare. No, we'll keep it PG for the kids.
They know where it's at already, bro. Come on.
All right. If you fucking dare. Check out the alley. Check out Mark on Facebook.
Instagram, TikTok.
Instagram, TikTok.
Facebook is kind of, Zuckerberg fucked that one up pretty good.
Yeah, folks.
But the best thing to do, go and pop in the alley.
Come by and say hi.
Yeah. They always got good deals going on. Right now you got a Demonia sale going on, I see.
Yeah, the wall's picked pretty clean. I got to figure out the next deal. That's my job tomorrow.
So you know what that means. You better hurry up in the store before all the things are gone.
Get on in there.
People coming, you're out of my size. I go, I've been running the sale for 3 weeks. What did you think was going to happen?
It's all your faults, guys.
Yeah.
Should come in sooner.
Get it while it's hot.
Yep.
Again, check out the alley, 2620 West Fletcher Street, Chicago, Illinois. Mark, again, thank you so much for joining us. We greatly appreciate it, my friend.
Yeah.
And hopefully this is the first of many that we get to work on together for some projects.
Let's hope you guys do well. I'll come back.
Hey, or if anytime you got events too, you let us know. We'd love to come work for you, man.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
All right. Well, from all of us here at Hawk Winds, to all of you out there, wherever you are, remember the light at the end of the tunnel, maybe you. I know I stole that from Aerosmith, but don't get too hard on me. You guys have a great night. Make it a great week today, all week. And, as Mark said, spread some love, spread kindness. And remember, it's we the people. It's not I, it's we.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yep.
So,
pretty much.
Thank you guys for joining us. My name is Jack Dwyer.
I'm Jay Smooth.
Thanks for watching Hawk Winds, guys.
Yeet.